we'll go ahead and get started here. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for our chapter secretary class in the Southwestern District. We're going to be covering a good bit of information this morning that all is not only germane to the position of chapter secretary, but also how the chapter secretary should work together with other chapter leaders, in particular the chapter president. Our presenter today is none other than Gary Hanna, who is our esteemed Southwestern District chapter secretary. He's had not only that role, but we were talking about this a little bit beforehand. He's had the role of EVP. He's been the district president. He served as chapter president for quite a while. He was the head of the leadership training in the district. So he's been a barbershopper, I think, for what, 26 years now, Gary? So quite a while.
Yep, something like that.
He's a breadth of knowledge, and so I'm really, really excited to have him conducting this class today. So, gentlemen, please help me welcome our Southwestern District Secretary, Mr. Gary Hanna.
Wow, breadth of knowledge. My wife usually just says I don't fit the chair. All right, you guys ready to start this thing? We're going to start by understanding the fundamental thing you've got to get your head around is that your chapter is a business. It has been, it always is. It's a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and because of that, there are certain legal, financial, and business requirements that you have to fulfill throughout the year, different times of the year. You guys who are chapter presidents, secretaries, and treasurers are the executive team that's responsible for the administrative side of everything. Of course, the chapter president wears two hats. He's got responsibility for oversight of the artistic side of the hobby as well, but one of his primary roles is to coordinate the work of the executive team so that the things that have to get done. Understand, I didn't say he has to do the things. He's got to coordinate it, okay? So this presentation, the whole idea is intended to help you coordinate the responsibilities of the chapters team, because frankly, your guys are counting on you. They require this corporate infrastructure to protect them from liabilities, from tax liabilities, from all sorts of different things. The corporate shell is the main reason that you pay dues to be a member of the society, is you want to bring yourself into the domain of the corporate shell, okay? But one of the problems we've had down through the years is just who's responsible for doing all these different jobs. And because it's always somebody else's job, too often things just didn't get done. So we're going to try and make sure that you understand. I'm trying to organize these things into a coordinated plan so that the chapter president, secretary, and treasurer, everybody knows whose responsibility it is to do different things, okay? So I've tried to organize this into a couple of different time categories. There are certain things that have to happen every month, some things that only happen occasionally, and some things that happen on a schedule, okay? So getting right into it, every month, the chapter president should prepare the monthly board meeting agenda with the chapter secretary, and is going to preside over the chapter meeting. In conjunction with that, the secretary needs to help prepare the agenda, okay? You're going to be kind of central to the whole agenda creation process. One of the things you need to do is download a current chapter roster from the Society's membership center, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a minute. It takes a couple of minutes to get everything done. But if you go into the member center and you click on chapter roster, you know how to, everybody I'm assuming knows how to get to the member center. It's members@barbershop.org. You have to log in and click on chapter. My chapter comes up with your chapter listing. And then you want to go down here and get a chapter roster, because it lists all the guys on your roster, and there's a way to download it, and I'm afraid it's underneath my images of the secretaries. I don't know. Anyway, you can download the roster, okay? So you want to download the roster and take that to the chapter meeting, because everybody needs to have an idea of whose dues are coming up, who's falling off the roster, so that you pass this off to the membership vice president. Treasurers, you're going to find out real quick. I don't know a whole lot about being a treasurer, except that you keep books. But there's some coordination that has to happen. There are certain things that the treasurer is responsible for. And then there's a lot that he's just not responsible for, that he seems to think he is. So the next category is any month as necessary. So the first thing that has to happen, if there's a vacancy on the chapter board, the chapter president needs to direct the nominating committee to select a candidate to replace him. The secretary, if something like that happens, should record any changes in the makeup of the chapter board and the chapter board minutes, report any changes in the makeup of the chapter board under the chapter officer link at the member center, and file any changes in the makeup of your chapter board with the Secretary of State Corporation section or equivalent agency. I don't know what it is in Louisiana, for example. Louisiana's different. You need to file your states with your state Secretary of State Incorporation section any necessary statements of continuing existence. Now in Texas, and I'm guessing most of you guys are in Texas. In Texas, the periodic report, they only require that you file a periodic report when they want it. It's a random thing. So they may ask for it every 4 years. They may ask for it after 30 years. But until they ask for it, they don't particularly want it. The problem is the information in the periodic report gets stale. Like your registered agent may die. It's what happened in my chapter back in '93 when I first became chapter secretary. Turned out our treasurer had been filing franchise tax reports. And when he failed to file, when we changed treasurers and they failed to file a new treasurer or the franchise tax report, comptroller sends to the Secretary of State a notice that we didn't pay. Secretary of State contacts the registered agent. Our registered agent's been dead for 12 years. And so they don't get a reply. And so the only recourse the Secretary of State has is to cancel your corporate charter. And I've spent months trying to get corporations reinstated, chapters reinstated as corporate entities, because that's your protection. That's what keeps your guys safe, okay? So one of the things, if you're a chapter secretary, is let's all coalesce around an agreement that we're going to file some kind of a statement of continuing existence or periodic report. Let's do it every year after we elect officers, or if you elect officers every 2 years, as soon as you've replaced the officers, make sure the record is accurate, so that if the Secretary of State needs to contact your registered agent they get a reply. And frankly, between you and me, I would make the registered agent your chapter secretary. Your chapter secretary is the official point of communications contact with the society and with other aspects. So why not with the Secretary of State? Make your chapter secretary the registered agent so that nothing falls through the cracks. If you don't do anything else, make sure your registered agent information is current with the Secretary of State. Okay, that's key. Because if anything goes wrong with your incorporation status, that's how you find out, is the Secretary of State sends something to the registered agent. Now, the society kind of wants to keep track of all this stuff too. So if you have completed a new statement of continuing existence or filed a Texas periodic report, go into the member center and under the My Chapter compliance filings and reports, indicate that you've verified your continuing existence with the Secretary of State. You'd be surprised. I have, out of all the 30 or so 25 or so chapters in Texas, 10 of them had no corporation when I started digging into this. They had forfeited their corporations. Some chapters had been forfeited as far back as 1956. It's just outrageous. They've been operating without a corporate shell since 1956. We can't do that, guys. We got to maintain this corporate infrastructure. And so that's what the society wants. They just want to know that you've looked and checked. Because if you're not a corporation, then the society's liability insurance doesn't extend to you. The society's 501c3 tax exempt status does not extend to you. You can't buy insurance coverage that will protect your, I mean, if you have risers or something, you got insurance on that. You can't buy that because you're not part of the society unless you've got a corporate shell. So maintaining this infrastructure is your job one, okay? Also, any month, well, I've already talked about the registration. It's critical that you make sure that the chapter's contact, your registered agent on file with the Secretary of State, is current. And like I said, I recommend it be the chapter secretary. If you don't do anything else, do that. Okay, other things that happen throughout the year that are not on a schedule. BMI show clearance applications. Before you book a venue or guest quartets for your shows, please look at the Southwestern District calendar. Let me show you where to find that. Gee, I'm not sure I can even get to. Yeah, I'll find it. Okay, if you go into swd.org, this is the district's website, okay, swd.org. If you go up here to events, district calendar of approved shows and events, you click on that. This is a calendar I maintain that shows what shows are booked and by which chapter for each day of the calendar year. The reason this is important is because the district has a policy. The district says that competing shows within 200 miles of each other on the same date are in conflict as a matter of policy, and the earliest show that's cleared will control the date. And resolving conflicts means As district secretary, I have to have a written waiver of district policy from the chapter that controls the date in order for you to stage a competing show. The reason this can become problematic is if you go out and you book a venue and then book a guest quartet, and it's on a date with that's competing with somebody else who's got a show, and they don't want to have the competition on that particular date, they can shut your show down, and you may have difficulty getting out of that contract for the venue or for the guest quartets or whatever. So check that calendar first. And if there's any conflicts, let's try and work and resolve conflicts. Unless the chapter has booked a big name quartet or something, spent some real money bringing people in, more often than not, they're dealing with a specific constituency and sharing but the policy is there to protect the chapter that's bringing in ringmasters or something from Sweden. If they're bringing them in, spending a tub of money, well, then they're going to want to protect their date, okay? And the rule is absolutely positively no show clearance, no show, no exceptions, okay? I'm the agent for the BMI people for this district, but I'm not the BMI police. Okay, I'm not going to go out and say, well, you didn't report this show. But what happens is they do have guys they send around. Not often, but every once in a while, somebody will get caught with it without a show license, and the penalty is $10,000 per song. Okay, so it's a $28 license. Get yourself the license. Get it before your show. Take it to the show and nail it to the wall or something, so that somebody, if there's ever a question that you have a license for the show, you've got it at the show with you, and you can prove to an examiner who comes by and says, let me see your license for this show. You can produce the show, you've paid your $28, you're good to go, okay? You can download a fillable copy from the document center on the barbershop.org website. It's fillable, it's a PDF fillable. Once you've completed it, send your BMI show clearance application along with your payment to me. It has to come to me as district secretary. That's my address. Whatever you do not send it direct to the society headquarters. They will either lose it or return it to you. They don't send it to me, okay? Once I've cleared the show, I'll add it to the district calendar so that other chapters know that you booked the date, and I'll send you a copy by email. One of the things that chapters don't take into account is every once in a while, the IRS is going to ask you to justify your 501c3 corporate status, tax-exempt status. And if you would maintain a contemporaneous journal of your public service, if you go out and sing at a nursing home or something, record that. You're not charging them anything, just record that. This contemporaneous document is very helpful if you're ever challenged as to whether you're living up to your 501c3 obligations. Don't do it from memory. if it's contemporaneous, it's generally admissible in court. Okay, so that makes it pretty strong. A lot of venues, when you book a show, are going to want to have themselves named as an additional insured on the society-provided liability insurance. The instructions for doing that are located in the document center. There's a form you have to fill out now. They do it differently every year, but generally speaking, let me show you where that is. If you go to the document center and under business and finance, find the link for insurance. And under insurance, there's a certificate of insurance request form. If you request that, it's a one-pager. It used to be 12 pages. It's a one-pager now. And send it to this email address right here, certrequest@ajg.com. They'll get you, they have a real good turnaround on getting you certificates out that name your venue as an additional insured. If you have vendors at an event, one of the things you need to do is to verify that they have liability insurance and that they have named you as an additional insured on their policy. And if they don't, you need to contact those people at that insurance agency and make sure that that any liabilities that occur because of their activities are covered that may involve an additional premium. Okay. Treasurers, you need to process BMI show clearance payments as they're needed, and at the end of the year, file an annual ASCAP reporting form, even if you did not have a show that year. Every chapter is now required to file the ASCAP reporting form, which is, in the document center again. Okay, under See All Documents, Show Clearance, ASCAP, and the 2018 form looks like this. The minimum, by the way, is $250. If you do a single show for payment, it's $250 ASCAP as the minimum. And if you're lucky enough to have, come up against the $30,739 of ticket sales, well, God bless you. You are one lucky chapter, but you owe more than the minimum $250. There's instructions on how to complete that form. Okay, it's $250 for this year. This is something that's new. There is a form that you have to complete and submit at the end of the year for any free or benefit performances that your chapter does. So when you go into the member center again, or to the document center rather, and you see all documents and you see show clearances, and you come down here, ASCAP free and benefit concert. If you have a benefit concert or a free concert, just make a note of it here, make another note of the second one. So it doesn't involve paying anything, but they want to have a record. Now, this is not the society that wants the record. This is ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. They require this. Just like a lot of things that are required of us, Some are the society's requirements. Some are requirements from ASCAP or BMI. Some of them are requirements from government entities. We have a lot of responsibilities doing this right. There are a lot of things that happen that come up once a year and have to be performed on a schedule. It's the responsibility of the chapter president to see that these things happen. He's coordinating these things. That doesn't mean he's doing all these things. There are some things he's responsible for doing. Okay, for example, in January, the incoming chapter president should appoint a nominating committee to develop a proposed slate of officers for the annual chapter election to be held in October. The deadline for presenting the next year's slate should be at least 30 days before the annual chapter meeting in October. He should also appoint a financial review committee to perform the annual financial review. Now, the annual financial review is like a peek over your treasurer's shoulder. This is not something that should be done by the treasurer. It's something that should be done by a committee that's separate from the executive team, so that the fidelity bondsman can know that somebody's looking at your chapter finances besides the treasurer. Okay, it's due by the 15th of May every year, and oddly enough, I've left it as eBiz. It's not eBiz, it's in the member center. You need to go to the member center under financial filings and report that you've done the report, and submit a copy of the filing. Secretary, read the minutes of the board meeting, into the minutes of a board meeting the names of any members who can reasonably be expected to handle money in any capacity for the chapter throughout the year. This brings them in under the fidelity bond. Chapter officers that are elected don't have to be specifically named. They're already named as officers of the chapter. Treasurer, when asked, you need to surrender the financial records to the annual financial review committee, and then back away. Just let the committee dig through your records. This is a review of your work, and honestly, you want to have it done. Being a treasurer is one job I would never do. I mean, talk about responsibilities, you know. You want somebody to verify how honest you are, okay, if you're a chapter treasurer. So let them do their job, back away. In February, if you're the president, you're the presumptive delegate to the Southwestern District House of Delegates meeting. The meeting may be in February or March, depending on the calendar, but you're the presumptive delegate. You can attend the meeting. It's a legitimate chapter expense. If you can't go yourself, you should send an alternate delegate whose name would be read into the minutes of a board meeting. And then you want to share information about the Southwestern District Convention that comes up in February. Also, well, this is what you would do. You would send that notification to me at secretary@swd.org. Okay, that's something the secretary does, because you're keeping the record. If you're the treasurer, IRS forms 1098 and 99 are due, I understand, to the IRS and anyone your chapter pays by February 28th of each year. You know, I think I've heard that may have changed under this recent tax code change, but I would stick with this for now until you learn differently. You guys are the treasurers. You know more about it than I do. March. Attend the Southwestern District House of Delegates meeting as the official delegate of your chapter, if you're the chapter president or the alternate delegate. Secretaries, spend a little time verifying your chapter's incorporation status with your office's Secretary of State Corporation section. Make sure that information gets posted to the Member Center financial filing section, and verify your registered agent information. March is just a good time to do it, is all. But I would make sure that it gets done with at least once a year with the current information, because they want to know who your officers are. And I would report just my secretary, president, treasurer. April, remind your treasurer that the Form 990 in e-postcard filing for most of us is required by May 15th. If you have to file a full 990, good luck. I have no idea how to do that, so don't come to me. That's a treasurer thing. But if you're president, also remind the Financial Review Committee that the report is due by May 15th. In May, in April, there's nothing really for the secretary or treasurer to do except for the things that have to be done every month. Okay. In May, the president needs to receive the report from the Annual Financial Review Committee by May 15th. Post a copy to the chapter membership so they can review it. Give a copy to the secretary so he can have a copy for the record, and then give a copy to the treasurer and review the financial review with the treasurer if you're a chapter president. Then if you're a chapter president, receive from the treasurer a copy of the acknowledgement of the IRS 990 in e-postcard filing or your 990 return. As a fiduciary of the chapter, you are responsible to be sure that the financial or that the tax filings that have to happen actually happen. You are a fiduciary of the chapter, okay? Make sure that the chapter secretary gets a copy of the IRS filing so that the chapter secretary can then receive the financial review for the record, receive the 990 postcard for the record, and he can post these things in the compliance and reporting section of the member center. Please note that the annual financial review and the 990 in e-postcard filing are on a fiscal year basis, which is generally when you report this in the member center. If you did it now for 2017 is the fiscal year. Don't put 2018 because you're filing it in 2018. It's the 2017 fiscal year report that you're filing in 2018. And of course, you can't file that until the end of the year. So don't be filing the 2017 annual report before the end of the year. Treasurer, make sure that you file that online 990 postcard filing. You'll notice these things they kind of mesh, okay? The secretary and the treasurer are doing things. The president is overseeing to make sure these things get done. It's so important that these things get done. June, president, verify that the 990 information was reported in the member center. Verify that the annual financial review was reported in the member center. Verify that the Secretary of State Incorporation information was reported. Are you picking up a theme here? Go to the member center, financial filing sections, and report having done this stuff. If you're going to do this stuff, you may as well get credit for having done it, right? Hey, it only makes sense. But the society, you understand, they need to know that this has been done. They don't particularly need to know what was done or how it was done or what the numbers look like, but they'd like to have that information to know that you've actually done the filings, because they don't want to have a bunch of chapters out there that are haven't filed 990 information for 3 years, and so the IRS has canceled their nonprofit status. That's what happens if you fail to file your 990 for 3 years running. The IRS will cancel your tax exempt status. Okay, so report these things. It's one thing to do the things, and it's another thing to report having done the things. Please don't stop short and fail to report that you've done these things, because the society has no way of knowing what you've done. Okay? They just don't have any way of knowing. And believe it or not, they really do need to know. Remind your members in June, chapter presidents, that you've got the society convention coming up, and you might want to review any society board developments in July after the board meeting with the membership. Presidents, you're busy through here. Secretaries, you've got really not a lot to do unless something comes up like a show clearance or the monthly board meeting. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the standard chapter bylaws since they were revised recently, you really ought to check them out, because there are some liberalities that have been added, like if you wanted to incorporate an outside individual on your board, like a banker or someone from the arts community, if you wanted to include them in your board of directors, you can now do that. Anyway, there's the standard chapter bylaws. That's what rules the roost, okay? You can have a chapter code of operations. If you do, or if you've written other policies that are supposed to be an adjunct to the standard district or standard chapter bylaws, they have to be approved by the Governance and Bylaws Committee of the Society. And all they're really looking for is conflicts with the standard chapter bylaws. So I would encourage you to get familiar with the standard chapter bylaws. August, chapter presidents, verify that the nominating committee is preparing a slate of officers for the coming year, so that in September you can set the date for the annual chapter meeting, which must be next year's chapter officers are going to be elected. The elections have to happen before October 15th of each year. You need to direct that the secretary send notices to the membership of the annual chapter meeting at least 2 weeks in advance of the meeting. And by the way, chapter presidents, you're also the presumptive delegate to the fall Southwestern District House of Delegates meeting. Again, if you can't make the meeting, send an alternate and notify me, the district president. I'm all elevated here. Notify me as the district secretary that you're sending an alternate, okay? Then let the guys know that there's a district convention coming up. Secretary, send required notices to the membership of the annual chapter meeting. The standard chapter bylaws require written notification at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting, okay? October, president, attend the district house of delegates meeting. Expenses associated with the trip are legitimate chapter expense. You need to preside over your chapter's annual chapter meeting by October 15th. You need to read the proposed slate of officers for the coming year at least once each week for 2 weeks ahead of the annual chapter meeting, and once at the annual chapter meeting for a total of 3 readings. If there is somebody that wants to be nominated from the floor, that has to be received and announced at least 1 week prior to the annual chapter meeting. I know this, I'm throwing a lot at you. Trust me, you're going to get a document that tells you where to get all of this stuff. So don't be scribbling, taking a lot of notes. Pay them, just pay attention, because you may hear something interesting, but the point is, we're going to give you all this information at the end of the meeting, so just relax. October, secretaries, record the minutes of the annual chapter meeting, and then critical, report the new slate of elected officers in the member center. My chapter under, okay, the elected officers are reported in the member center under chapter, my chapter, chapter leaders, and then under future leaders. If you don't report in the future leaders section when the new year rolls around, your officers will be left out of the communications loop, and you may be unable to update anything in the member center because your authority to edit that information expires when the computer thinks you are out of office, which is usually the end of the calendar year. So at a minimum, at least report the new chapter secretary, even if it's you. One of the things they pointed out to me that I was unaware of until recently was, if you've got no change in the officers, just go into the current officers and edit the dates. You don't have to go in and add everybody in the future, and it'll carry them forward. Just edit the dates so that you edit the end date. Okay, now again, if you have any changes in your chapter board, report it with your Secretary of State. They may not want the information as often as once a year. Some states do, some states don't. It doesn't matter. They will take it every year. In fact, they'll take it every 6 months if you give it to them. Okay, at the end of the calendar year, all we're doing is you're assisting the new officers coming in, attending chapter officer training if it's required. And if you're the president in December, you need to verify with the treasurer that the annual ASCAP filing and the associated payment were made. Those come to me. Okay. What I do is I'll make a record of it so that someone besides just you and the society know that it was done. Okay. But I have to keep track of who's filed. Okay. So that I can know who to rag on if you haven't. Other things you need to know. Your chapter is going to be billed early in the year for a liability policy that covers covers people who are patrons to your shows and that sort of thing. Your membership is not covered by the general liability policy. There's a complete description in the document center. Come back. Let's see. There is an accidental medical expense insurance that covers your members. I remember back in the early 2000s, we were in Houston at a school auditorium for our spring convention. And one of the guys from the chapter was working, and he wasn't paying real careful attention. And he stepped right off the front skirt of the stage and broke his leg in 4 places and had no health insurance. He was up the creek. They kept trying to get it paid under the general liability policy, and the liability policy did not cover members at the time. Now it does. You've got accidental expense and liability insurance that's going to cover the membership as well. It's built into your dues. Okay. Property insurance is available at an extra cost. There's information in the document center under business and finance. Okay. Tax exemption. Generally, your chapter is exempt from paying sales taxes and federal, state, and local income taxes, but becoming exempt may not be automatic. In Texas, for example, and I think most of our chapters are beyond this now because I've worked so hard to get it recognized, but in Texas, all corporations, even nonprofit corporations, must file an annual franchise tax return and pay the 6% franchise tax unless they have filed with the controller a form that's claiming the exemption from the franchise and sales tax. Failing to file without having first claimed the exemption could result in the Secretary of State revoking your corporate charter. And well, it's actually the number 2 reason for Texas chapters ceasing to exist. The number 1 reason is failure to have a current registered agent, so that when a problem like this comes up, there's nobody to notify. Okay. Other states have different arrangements, but if you have not filed to claim the exemption, then there's a good chance your corporate status has been forfeited. Other states have different arrangements. So if you're in Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, or maybe New Mexico even, you just have to check with your state Secretary of State's office or the comptroller's office, I guess. And I'll point out in Texas, filing this claim for an exemption, along with the society's 501c3 determination letter from the IRS, granting the exemption from the sales tax is automatic. Okay. Regardless of your tax exemption, all chapters must file an IRS Form 990 e-postcard return with the federal government. It's easy. It's 3 minutes tops, unless you have problem remembering your sign-in information, like I do every year. Now, one other thing you need to know: why you may be exempt from paying sales taxes, you're not always exempt from collecting sales taxes. There are rules, that govern this, like in Texas. The garage sales rule. I forget exactly what it is, but if you're going to be selling something to the public and you're going to do it more than twice a year, you may need to register with a comptroller to collect sales tax. If you're selling CDs online all through the year, you almost certainly need to be collecting sales tax. Now, I know that this has been a lot of stuff, and you can't possibly have picked up all of it. If anything, I hope a few alarm bells have gone off as we went through, and you're thinking, I better remember that, and then you forget it because it's just too much stuff to absorb in an hour, okay? And it's not so much knowing all this and being an expert. I don't know any one of you that signed on to have a second job, okay, at which you have to be completely expert. This is why we've written there are so many resources on the document center, but the one that I rely on most heavily is a document called the Business of Barbershop. But first, here's a bunch of stuff. I keep forgetting what order I've got these things in. The BHS website, it's got the standard chapter bylaws, a chapter secretary manual, exhibits, treasurer manual. It's got sample chapter business plans and chapter management guides, ASCAP reporting forms and BMI show clearance applications, all kinds of stuff. You owe it to yourself to spend a couple of hours digging through the document center. You may find there's some resources that will help you grow your membership. All kinds of things you can do in the member center, like download a chapter roster, change your chapter dues structure. If you're going to change your chapter dues, by the way, it takes 60 days from the date you report the change in the member center dues section for the society to effect the change when they start collecting dues from your membership. So if you, what month is this? This is March, April, May. So if you wanted to change the dues now, it would be in effect for your June member renewals. Okay, is that right? March, April, May, whatever. So anyway, it's not automatic, not instantaneous. You need to leave some 2 months worth of lead time on that. You can report filing your 990s, submission of financial reviews. You can change your chapter meeting information. You can enroll a new member. Have you guys seen that yet? Enrolling a new member. Well, okay. In the member center, I said in the member center, there we go. Okay. Chapter, my chapter. Oh, right over here. Add a member to my chapter. The new membership enrollment process is you go to the member center, chapters, add a member to my chapter, input the information for the new member here, his name. Well, if he's an existing member and he's transferring, add this member number information there. What chapter are you adding a member to, member information, subscriptor information. And as you submit these different things, more information is requested. And they ultimately get his name and his contact information, and they send him a link where he can then go and sign up and pay by credit card online. And it's quick and easy. No more paper applications unless you're doing things like easy dues. If you're doing easy dues, and of course they've changed that, but the instructions are on the paper application, which you can get in the document center. Okay, so this business and finance section, that may not have your membership information. There it is, membership documents are down at the bottom of the document center. Okay.
It's also right there at the very top, in that right-hand side, the very first listing, there is membership application.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
see, poking around in the website, you'll find all kinds of stuff. The member center is not nearly as restrictive as it was when they first put it out. We've moaned and groaned about it enough that they finally said, well, all right, shut up and we'll do it. These are the kinds of things you can do at the district website, swd.org. Actually, the website is kind of under construction. Not real pleased with the website, but the main thing as a chapter secretary is you can find the district calendar. Okay, when in doubt, ask. When I became district secretary, I determined that I was going to do it differently. So many of the district secretaries see their job as taking notes at district meetings and approving show clearances. I have tried to restructure the job to be more of a resource. You chapter presidents, secretaries, and treasurers, you're my heroes. And if there's anything I can do to help you make your job easier, I want you to contact me. Secretary at swd.org gets me every time. Call me, 361-739-9300. And that's my address. That's the information, my information. So for goodness sakes, if you have problems or confused about any of this stuff, I'm here for you, okay? It's not an imposition for you to call on me. What's an imposition is when you don't call on me and something falls through the cracks and I have to fix it. So by all means, call me. I won't bite except Mickey.
So Gary, we are bumping up against the top of the hour, but I do have a few questions. If you don't mind,
This is my last slide, so yes, go ahead.
You want to go ahead and cover that, and then I will.
No, this is the link to that document.
Excellent. So can I get you to send me this PowerPoint at the end, and I will disseminate that out? I know that all the information is on the Business of Barbershop, but I think it would be good for me to send this out if I can, so the guys have your address all in one location, along with some of the high points that you covered. Okay. So a few questions. First of all, you talked about in Texas, there's a statement of continuing existence. Is there a template or a standard form in Texas for that?
It's called the periodic report.
Okay.
If you go to, here, let me just show you. Go to Google and you say, and you want to see the Texas Secretary of State's periodic report for nonprofit corporations. You go, it's as easy as going to Google. And the document is
perfect.
Coming up. There you go. It's Form 802, and it's got blanks for your file number. By the way, if you don't know your file number, I know it now. Okay. I've spent the last 10, 12 months getting file numbers and taxpayer ID numbers and correct legal corporate names for the chapters. And I've got it all in a document that's called the Code of Operations and Statements of Policy that I'll be sending out to the chapters for their approval at the House of Delegates meeting in Baton Rouge. It's a 50-some-odd page document, so I'm not going to send it out as an attachment, but you will want to look at that document. It's going to need your approval. There's all kinds of policies in it. And for crying out loud, the district is the Southwestern District Association of Chapters. The chapters are the district, okay? So when you see this document, you might want to go through it. There's some information that's related directly to you in terms of your file numbers and your incorporation name. We've had some issues with corporate names. The name of your registered agent. Some chapters will use an attorney as their registered agent, just because it provides continuity from one board of directors to another. I really recommend the chapter secretary do that. The registered agent.
A question about this: if we have to make a change to, say, for instance, the registered agent, or in my case, this is something I just bumped up against. We need to change the address of the registered agent on file with the Secretary of State. Can I make that change in this report, or do I need to file a certificate of addendum to make that address change separately?
You do that in this report. This is a fillable PDF, by the way. It says the names and addresses of all directors of the corporation are, well, let's see. I would use this page to report the address of your registered agent. Just type in registered agent right here under officer title. Well, here's the registered agent.
Yeah, it does have their information up there. I just didn't know if this was a reporting thing, if changes that were different from the last time we reported on this, if this was just confirmation, or if we could actually make a change if, for instance, that registered agent's name or address changed.
This is to report on who this person is.
Okay.
And then they turn around and they file it. That's what the Secretary of State does, is they file things. Okay. So you're going to file a report, a periodic report of the name of the. You can't change the name on this form. That requires another piece of paper. The name of the registered agent, though, the name of all the different officers of your chapter. When it talks about a foreign corporation, by the way, if you're incorporated in Texas, you're a domestic corporation. Foreign just means you're on the other side of the Rio Grande, or not the Rio Grande, the Red River. If you're on the other side of the Red River, you're a foreign corporation in Texas, but you're domestic in your state.
Okay.
Other questions?
Cool. Not related to this, but I do have three other questions. So first of all, if a chapter is within, going back to the chapter clearance from the Southwestern District and the 200-mile policy, if a chapter is within 200 miles and has the particular date that, for instance, my chapter wants to have a show, because you mentioned it's possible to get a written waiver. Is there some specific form, or how do we get that waiver from the chapter to have that show on the same date?
You just communicate with the leadership of the other chapter. And if you don't know who that is, contact me and I'll put you together, and we'll get it done.
Okay.
If there's any give at all, we'll get it done. Like around Christmas, everybody's doing Christmas shows, so the waiver is really easy to get at Christmas, because everybody has their own constituency that they market to, and they generally don't have a lot of crossover. Next question.
Okay, we talked earlier about the franchise tax exemption in Texas. Is there a specific form, or do you have the document number where we can get that form to get the exemption?
Yeah, go into Google. Go in here and click on tax exemptions for qualified organizations. Under forms, that's what I was looking for. You go in here in application for exemption, charitable organ. Well, we're actually listed as an educational organization, and you click on that, and the form should come up. Google is your friend.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah.
And also, you should be able to see either by looking up your corporation number whether the state controller has you exempt or not.
Yes. Like I said, we've mostly got beyond this issue. The issue now is as we bring in new chapters, that filing may fall through the cracks. But almost all Texas chapters now that all of them that I'm aware of have now filed. Okay. But it never hurts to ask. If you call up the comptroller's office, get the number from the website or something, these people are willing to help you out. They will go to great lengths to help you. The Secretary of State's office, they understand not everybody knows how to dig through their website. They will help you. They get paid to help you. So, yeah. Good.
Okay, I got one final question that was asked, and it's kind of a multi-part question. So I'll start off with the first part, and that is, does our liability insurance cover a guest quartet that is selling CDs?
I don't know.
Okay. Who would we ask that question then? Is that something we should call Nashville and ask for?
I would send the question to the customer service at barbershop.org and ask the question and be as specific about it as you can. I don't mean you have to name a quartet, but I mean about the kind of circumstances you're wanting to be sure you've got covered. Generally, if they're there at your behest, I don't know.
Okay.
You're getting in the weeds.
I'm glad we were able to find one way to stump you. I didn't think we would. A second part to that is what defines a show? For example, is a paid afterglow considered a show?
Yes.
That's a separate show?
Believe it or not, it's a separate show.
Okay. And
if you're charging admission for it, I mean, a lot depends on how well you're able to hide your afterglow.
Okay.
If I say that out loud, I don't mean that.
All right.
Not the BMI police.
Finally, who is primarily responsible for filing other copyrighted stuff like mechanical licenses, for instance?
That's the secretary.
The chapter secretary.
Yeah, if you're needing to secure a mechanical license, unless your chapter has someone specifically delegated to do that kind of thing, because it's kind of an esoteric area, and you might want to coordinate it with Janice Bain at Society headquarters. Janice is the Society's copyright guru. She knows everything there is to know about getting licenses for music and mechanical licenses and all that good stuff. But you either need to designate an individual who's responsible for learning all the ins and outs of that, or let the secretary do it. So secretaries, if you don't want to do it, tell the president to pick somebody, an attorney in your chapter, to do it.
Okay, that is all the questions that anybody has sent me across on chat. I know that a couple guys have already had to leave because we're about 10 minutes over.
Yeah.
If anybody has another specific question, I would probably suggest that you're welcome to either email Gary directly at the link, which is secretary at swd.org, or it'll be included in the PowerPoint that Gary's going to send, and I will disseminate after the fact. If you have a specific question, you're welcome to shoot Gary an email, or you can shoot me an email as well. So, Gary, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the presentation. This was informative. I've actually got 6 to do that came out of this myself, and I'm not even the chapter secretary. So,
well, the document from which this whole presentation was taken is called The Business of Barbershop. If you go into the documents section of the website, oh, never mind, pay no attention to me. If you go into the documents section of the website, it's the very top document under business and finance.
And I will be sending out that link immediately afterwards here when I send out the PDF as well. So everybody who attended and those who did not attend, they'll be able to see it on the YouTube when we post that link as well.
By the way, if you're just a chapter secretary or just a chapter treasurer, share that document with your president, secretary, and treasurer. Make sure everybody gets the document so you're all on the same page as to who's doing what and when. Okay?
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Gary. We appreciate it, gentlemen. We thank you for joining us today. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to help as best we can.
Thanks, Gary.
You bet you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Saturday.
Take care.
See you Thursday, Gary.